Hey, what's up guys? John here. You're going to see some really interesting things coming very, very soon. I actually think we're probably going to see the end of this booming housing market, but not from a traditional sense, not from, an affordability sense based on what people can afford on their mortgages. What I think is unique about this specific section of the real estate market that we're in is we're in a period where people are putting 25, 30, 40% down, paying all cash. People are highly qualified. The loans are good. They're traditional 30-year fixed rate mortgages in most cases. You have a lot of private money sitting on the sidelines. People are really desperate to allocate capital in this high inflationary environment into hard assets that are going to preserve and grow wealth. We're seeing this across the board. And what I think is very unique and fascinating here is what I think is going to make this market change more than any other time before it is going to be the policies. It's going to be the rising cost. Now, what I've just seen is Progressive. They dropped 56,000 homeowner policies in just the state of Florida. This is very recent, 56,000 policies. They're like the Walmart of insurance. We have all of these companies that are now looking at underwriting differently. And if you have a mortgage on your property, in most cases, 99% of which, they're going to demand that you have homeowners insurance because they want that asset protected. They want their investment protected. In case something happens, they want to make sure they're going to get paid. And so people are going to have to pay money, whatever it's going to cost to insure those properties. That is going to be going up. But at the same time, as these rising costs, I believe what we're going to see over the next year or two is going to be rising costs on the insurance, and that it's going to continue to progress. It's going to progress gradually every single year. I think it's going to be much greater than what people are anticipating. They're going to think it's not that big of a deal. But if you look at the data, you look at the numbers, it's expensive in a lot of markets. But what I find absolutely fascinating is at the same exact time as homeowner insurance policies in places like Florida and Texas and other locations, in a lot of places, I'll show you guys the map right here for FEMA 2.0 rating, which is basically laying out the map and where policy is going to be increasing, is we have this situation with energy that we've never had before. So we had the Keystone Pipeline that was cut last year, but we have 11% of our fossil fuels that we obtain in America comes from Russia, and we just placed sanctions on Russia, and we're going to continue to push sanctions according to White House. So if that does happen, we're going to have less and less access to fossil fuels. But what I find very fascinating here is that at the same day, the same time that we issued those sanctions, we also canceled leases on existing pipelines in America. So what we are going to have is we are going to see rising utilities unless somehow, some way, we end up making up for it. But we're already seeing it at the gas pump. Now, what I think we're very likely going to see is I think we're going to see rising utility costs. I believe that is we're already kind of seeing it on a small scale, but I do believe that it's going to be first come, first serve. People are going to have to spend much more money to obtain, their electricity bills and their, basic necessities. Things are going to get more expensive. So what I think we're seeing that's very unique about this specific housing cycle and this, in this environment is we're seeing rising utility costs, rising costs for fossil fuels and at the gas pump, all going up. And then we're also seeing rising insurance premiums. So a lot of people that are buying properties right now saying, I can afford it, things are only going to get more expensive. We have traditional inflation, between 15 and 20%, excluding utility bills, excluding homeowner policies. All of these things are going to continue to increase. The big question I ask myself is, what's the net solution? Because at the end, there is a solution. It's not like it's just going to continue to just go sky high forever. I believe the real solution at the end is likely going to be electrifying real estate and making homes a bit more environmentally friendly. But during that whole process, from where we are right now to rising costs, on the other side of that is going to be those costs to make your home and make the home sustainable and more environmentally friendly. So I believe we're going through this transition. We're not just seeing it with real estate though. So we're seeing it with even like Bentley, and a lot of vehicle manufacturers are coming out with all electric vehicles, right? And so we're seeing the electricity or the electric vehicles, and then we're also seeing plant-based foods. We're seeing a lot of unique things all occur at the same time. So I believe what we're going to be seeing here is just real estate going through a big change in a big way. Real estate's going to be going through a really big change in a really big way. I think even traditional fundamentals for real estate is going to change. I saw an article today from Wired Magazine saying that they're talking about deconstructing real estate in certain markets. I believe it was Houston, Portland, a couple other ones, Ithaca, New York. And so what they were saying is that the cost to deconstruct the real estate is 80% more than traditional demolition, but it's better for the world, is what they're saying. So 80% more expensive, and they're already running pilot programs and things like this. This is all happening now. So I think all of this is going to be happening. It's going to be happening in a big way in probably all markets. So I do believe that people that are out there investing in real estate right now with no fundamental looks, like no focus on what's happening. They're not paying attention to the future and how this is going to impact housing. I think it's going to be a mistake. I think that they're going to be walking into a mistake. Traditional fundamentals where you're just underwriting a deal based on cash flow, looking at what a property would yield on your cash on cash return and paying attention to that without paying attention to what's going on in every single city and state and jurisdiction around you, it's going to be a mistake. And unfortunately, it looks like 99% of people are in that space. They're simply just buying deals because they're afraid of inflation and they're running out there acquiring assets with ignoring the big elephant in the room, which is going to be this change. This change isn't going to happen today. It might happen in a year. It might happen in 6 months. It might happen in 18 months. But we're gradually going through this period right now. Some deadlines, and I think it's 33 cities and a couple states, the deadline is 2024, right? Earth Day 2024. So that's pretty fast, right? And so if you look at the supply chain issues right now, even just getting the supplies to do these changes, it's going to be very challenging, right? And so that's what I think is going to be the big threat to the housing market. It's going to be rising utility costs, rising insurance costs, and it's going to be some of these upgrades to properties. I think it's going to be very unique, very interesting, because who can these landlords that are buying these properties the last couple of years, a lot of transactions have occurred, that have purchased these properties based on rents increasing by 15, 18, 20% from the year prior, and now they have rising insurance costs. So they're going to want to push these costs onto the tenant because how else can they pay for it, right? And especially if they're buying it at a 4 or 5% cap rate, how else can they pay it? They have to push those costs to the tenant, right? But when the tenant is then getting hit with increased utility bills, how can the tenant afford an apartment at 20% more than what they were paying a couple of years ago, plus rising utility costs, plus rising gasoline prices, plus rising food costs? Meanwhile, they're only getting a raise at 3.5%. So they're taking a net loss on purchasing power of like 16 or 17% from the year prior. It's going to be unique. This is what I see as the big change. But I see ultimately the real big opportunity is going to be hedge funds, Wall Street stepping in, using their capital in a very big fashion to take advantage of this. Because after all, the dollars, we're heading, I believe, downhill on the dollar. And I think that the dollar over the next 5 to 10 years is going to have a very low utility value. And I think that hard assets are going to be the way to go. But using that capital, that liquidity now in a smart way is going to be most important, right? And so paying attention to all of these changes, having a really good plan, really being forward thinking, looking at what's actually occurring and building out a frame of mind on what's occurring based on it already have occurred, right? And because when you do this, what are you doing? You're going to really be extra careful. You're going to pay attention to every single thing that other people, they're just disregarding. Then if and when things hit the fan, this isn't like a guess. This is what they're saying, right? And so if what they're saying comes to fruition, which it looks like it is, then what's ultimately going to be happening is you're going to be well positioned, well poised to take advantage of additional opportunities from all the people that didn't pay attention. That's going to be the real big thing. Taking advantage of opportunities when everyone else disregarded them and they just went out on their way, investing, buying up every single thing that they possibly could. And then when they have to go through these changes, they're going to be in a really big situation, right? It'll be unique too, also to look at it from the perspective of if they purchase a building and rents increase 20%, and then we have a period in which they have rising homeowner costs, and they have to try to push that onto the tenant, and then the tenant has the additional cost. If it comes to a situation where the tenant's like, hey, I can only afford X, or I'm going to have to do this roommate situation, I'm going to have to do this, how that landlord is going to be able to be flexible. What we're seeing is a lot of the big players, they're going after single family homes in mass scale. That's what they're targeting, single family homes. And a lot of them are paying all cash. We've all heard about that, all these cash buyers. So if they have to self-insure, meaning if something happens to their property, they insure it themselves, they can easily do it. They can just say, okay, I'm going to self-insure. If something happens, I will self-insure, right? And they have an easy way out. Meanwhile, everyone else that has a mortgage is going to be in a unique shift, with where they have to say, okay, either I'm going to have to pay for these additional costs, I'm going to have to do a room share situation to bring in more net cash flow. I've spoken about this. I believe that's where Wall Street's ultimately going to go. It's going to be more of a room share type of situation to extract more yield from properties. That's what I think is going to happen. Unique things are going to be occurring in the real estate market, and it's going to change the way we look at real estate forever. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with rising insurance costs and rising utility bills and rising costs across the board? How is it going to impact the real estate market? Drop it below. Let's talk about it. Subscribe here. Consider subbing on my second channel down below. I'll leave the link. Also, subscribe on TikTok for short form content. All right, guys, catch you later.